All right, we are live. So, guys, Tony Maritato here. I am joined by Ryan Carr. So, Ryan, I'm just going to give a brief history on kind of what you've done and how I connected with you. And then I'm going to let you take over and give us more information. So, I actually found Ryan through watching and researching how I can use newsletters to grow my audience. For the therapists that know me, I've got my total knee replacement support group. I've got my YouTube channel. That channel does like 5 million views a year, but I'm not monetizing it in any way. I've got a Facebook group with 15,000 members. I'm not monetizing it in any way. And so I was desperate to build on that community, to access the value in that resource. I was researching newsletters. I came across Ryan. I'm a huge fan of The Hustle, which is a newsletter that Ryan was involved with. And I know that this is the future. This is the direction we all need to go. But I told Ryan before I started recording, I'm like, I'm stuck in 1982. In my mind, a newsletter is a piece of paper that nobody wants to read, that nobody wants to waste time with. But I know newsletters, Brian's going to tell us, that have sold for like hundreds of millions of dollars. It's just crazy to me that there is a way to deliver value to a community that people actually want to access. So Ryan, first, thank you for taking the afternoon and spending some time with us. Tell me about kind of your background and how you got involved in newsletters.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the intro, Tony. Excited for the conversation. So, as you mentioned, I was at a newsletter called The Hustle. The Hustle was basically like business and tech news for kind of a professional audience. So, I was managing growth for The Hustle. We had a free newsletter, and then we had like a premium subscription side of that as well. And we managed to grow it to quite a large audience, about 1.6 million subscribers. So all kind of tuning into The Hustle for their business and tech news. We sold to a company, an enterprise software company called HubSpot. And that was about maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago now. And so after we sold, it kind of made some waves in the email and like digital media space. There were some other newsletters, as you mentioned, Morning Brew being another one that had large acquisitions. And so I think folks started to pay attention to email newsletters as a viable business, whether it be a channel that they're growing adjacent to their own business, or a business model in itself. And so I found the opportunity to start consulting with other digital media companies that were trying to grow newsletters or start newsletters. And in doing that and working across all these different verticals, we learned a lot about how to build an engaging newsletter for businesses. And so we thought, why don't we just start building them from scratch? And so that's what I'm doing currently with my agency Tailwind. That's how we got in touch, Tony, where we take folks that have email lists or the ability to grow email lists, and we advise them on how to build a newsletter. Then we actually build that newsletter from scratch for them. So that's high level how I got involved. I've been in newsletters since my time at The Hustle, and it's been really cool to one, see how the space has evolved and kind of the new tools that are out there, and make it really easy for folks to start something from scratch. And two, just all of the interests, obviously. And I think you're a great example of that as well. I think a lot of folks are trying to catch on.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've always heard, and these are my biases that I want you to just destroy because they don't make sense. I hear countless people who say, don't rent your audience, that your audience on social media doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the platform, my YouTube, my Facebook. I don't have control over that audience. I need to collect emails. But as a consumer on the other side, I hate email. I don't want email. I don't look at email. And I've got, 250,000 unread emails in my Gmail account that are never going to get touched. So in your own words, how would you distinguish the difference between, let's say, a typical email campaign versus a newsletter? What's the difference there?
Yeah, so I would think of a newsletter as an extension of the value first content that you would provide on something like your YouTube channel or a podcast, for example. So really, you're approaching it not from a lens of how can I sell as effectively as possible. And I think a lot of people, when they think of email marketing, they think of almost kind of spammy stuff that shows up in their inbox, and just like discounts or sales or that kind of thing. A newsletter is more, I would say, a direct extension of the kind of value first content, in that you're just providing that content in the medium of like long form text rather than in a video or podcast. So, I mean, just going back to the example of the hustle, what we were trying to do was just provide the news to people every single day and build a habit of them opening our email, and getting the news in like a witty, fun, kind of almost sarcastic voice, right? So it was built to entertain, built to provide value, um, and provide that value first rather than kind of be salesy. So you can think of it as just any other form of organic content, really.
Yeah, and I almost look at it like blogs are a passion of mine. I love writing blogs. I love writing articles. Before Google just destroyed all organic reach a couple 6 months ago, blogs were a great way to collect and connect with an audience. I could answer specific questions. And so when I think of kind of the new version of a newsletter, I do think of it as, okay, blogs. Google was putting my blog article in front of a consumer who is actively searching for that information. How do I heal a sore knee? Now, a newsletter is kind of the same thing, but it's a more direct route. It's me being able to connect with an audience to provide value, and the email is the mode to get that information to the consumer. Uh, I want to hear about monetization strategies, because on blog posts, obviously I have display ads. I can use affiliate marketing. I could do different things. But what are people doing today using newsletters to monetize that content?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're still able to utilize a lot of the same kind of web-based monetization tools like affiliate links. Um, what folks will do once they've built a large enough audience, and this is it the more niche your audience too, it doesn't require it to be as large. But folks will, and how we did it at the hustle, um, sell sponsorship opportunities to other brands. So you can, in the same way that you would with a YouTube channel, find sponsor partners to place ads in your newsletter. So that's one way. And then the way that I would recommend to anybody is just basically you're creating this trust and this level of demonstrated expertise with your newsletter on a regular basis. So I think it's a great opportunity to, also over time, introduce your services, introduce your products. Um, Newsletters and email in general is a great medium, because unlike in a YouTube video, for example, you can have links throughout the content. I mean, I'm sure you can do that to YouTube, to some extent as well, but it's not as native looking as it is in an email. And it's not as, you won't get the same kind of click through rate that you would with an email. And so, yeah, I mean, sponsorship is a route of monetization for folks that grow a large enough audience. Affiliate links, you can place them in a way that's really native and effective. And then, of course, just your own products and your own services. Those would be the three major ways. But yeah, hopefully that's
Yeah.
hopefully that clears up. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I discussed, and full disclosure for anybody watching, I reached out to Ryan because I want to hire his team to help me and a couple associates, you guys probably know who I'm talking about, launch some newsletters. Now, these are really targeted newsletters. There are patient-facing newsletters. There's profession-facing newsletters. And so Ryan and I were talking about, okay, I don't like to start anything without knowing, how am I going to monetize this? What are the opportunities? What is the potential upside versus the downside risk? And one of the things that we had talked about was, I obviously have some digital courses that I teach to other therapists. That's just like a no-brainer. It's the easiest way for me to monetize a newsletter right out of the gate. Plus the fact that I already have an audience that knows, likes, and trusts me. I've been delivering free value on other modes of media for a decade now. This is just one more addition. And so I was testing things a little bit. I didn't tell you this, Ryan, but I'm trying to think like, what can I actually deliver of value in a newsletter, peer to peer, profession to
Mhm.
profession? And I get a lot of inbound requests from product companies that want me to do an unboxing video, a product review video. Some of them are paid sponsorships. Some of them are exchange for the product because it's a high priced product. And I reached out to a small private group I have on Facebook and I was like, hey guys, if I can direct some of these sponsorship opportunities your way, would you be interested in joining my newsletter slash email list? And 30 or 40 yeses, not a single person said no within the first couple hours of sharing that post. So there's definitely things of value that we can deliver. And of course, if there's a monetary exchange, it's a super easy one to monetize right out of the gates. And like you said, a small audience that's highly focused, I think we can deliver value and exchange that value for monetary compensation. But I want to pick your brain a little bit on the bigger audiences because a lot of people watching this, they specialize in fall recovery. They specialize in pelvic health. They specialize in other stuff. You and I, and you can say the platform or not, totally up to you,
Sure.
talked about platforms where when we publish a newsletter, that newsletter content's also available through the web. It's SEO optimized, like people can find you in different ways. Tell me a little bit about the architecture and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So the platform we were talking about was Beehive. There are also, platforms like ConvertKit. Um, as a quick aside, like the tools for newsletters have really just kind of blown up in a way where it's made it very accessible for anyone who's not even necessarily super web savvy or software savvy. They make it very easy for you to set it up. That being said, so tools like Beehive and tools like ConvertKit, when you send out the newsletter, it also automatically, you can set it so that it automatically becomes a web post that is accessible through search engines. So you can SEO optimize, you can search engine optimize uh, the newsletter posts themselves. So they go out to your email audience, and then they also exist as a standalone article or web page. And I think it's a really useful approach, and one that we take personally with our partnerships, to think um, almost start from an SEO perspective in a way, like thinking what are questions, long tail questions or key phrases that I could answer for my audience. If you have a really niche audience, then there are going to be very specific tactical questions that you can answer. So what is a question that I can answer with this next newsletter edition or this next email that I send out? And then if it's specific and tactical and valuable enough, it exists as a web page or as a blog post. And we've seen folks that we work with start ranking for really competitive terms, just because they're doing such a great job with their newsletter. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. In effect, the newsletter can serve as like the top of a content flywheel. If you think about it, you're creating this long form, value dense text. If you're using a tool like Beehive or ConvertKit, it automatically exists as a web page. But then you have other text-based organic channels like LinkedIn or like Twitter, and you can just chop the newsletter up and use that for content on those channels as well. So if you build a good workflow, it can serve a lot of purposes outside of just email as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've heard about everything else. It's like this needs to be, posted across multiple media sites and opportunities for people to come in. So if I write an article or I do something for the newsletter and it's SEO optimized, somebody searching for the answer to the question might come across it through the web. And then of course they have the chance to join my newsletter at that point. Once they're on the newsletter, if I have a digital product that I can sell, and I want to ask you about that, that's an easy, upsell right there to start monetization.
Yep.
I've got several companies, product companies that want to collaborate with me. They want paid placements on the newsletter. One of the things that I struggle with is I want a measurable return on the investment. I
Mhm.
don't just want a company to pay me for impressions. CPMs aren't high enough, even at $50 and $100 CPMs for a small newsletter like I would produce. I'm never going to make any money with that. But if I have a product company that can pay $100,000, $500,000 commission based on a directly measured sale that came from my newsletter, like that's where I want that monetization to go. But before we get to that, talking about digital products, I teach
Mhm.
a course on how to bill Medicare, like super simple. It's an easy sale. I don't do any paid ads for that. It's all organic. And I teach it as a live cohort every single month. What are your thoughts on small newsletters that have a very focused community, really focusing the monetization on using this to sell those digital courses, digital assets?
I think that's the way to go. Especially as like kind of an entry level. If you don't necessarily have like the partnerships that you can leverage right off the bat, for like some sort of sponsorship or affiliate opportunity, I think an information product, whether that be a course, whether that be some sort of consulting opportunity, I think those are the way to go. Primarily because it translates so well. It's such a coherent journey from the free content that you're providing with the newsletter, where you're building trust, you're demonstrating your expertise, you're showing that you can provide that kind of value up front. Um, it's a really uh, uh, sensible next step for somebody to say, well, this person obviously knows what they're talking about. They provided me so much value for free. I'm sure that their course is going to be, or their digital product or their information product is going to be worth the money and valuable. So it's just a really coherent journey, from the free newsletter to a digital information product, and we've seen it work for a lot of our partners really well.
Nice. Now, as we kind of come close to the end of our time, I want to hear a little bit more about Tailwind Studios and about your agency. I know because I've been kind of going down this road with you, but for people watching, what is the process like? How does somebody who sees this interview and they're like, I've got 1,000 people on my email list? Because that's another question. Therapists are going to be like, well, how many emails do I need? I'm going to tell you, most therapists today are using electronic medical records. They're
Mhm.
collecting emails within that electronic medical record. I shared a poll recently where I said, who has, and I don't even remember. I think it was under 1,000 emails, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10, and 10,000 or more. And there were people in all of those categories. So they have these emails. Not a single one of the people who responded, I think it was 30 responses, is doing anything to monetize those emails beyond just the professional services they're selling. So I'm like, we're capturing the information, but we're not using it. So somebody who's sitting there with 1,000 emails, sitting in a database of people who know, like, and trust them already, what is the process if they want to reach out to you? Kind of what does your agency do for them exactly? And how does this all begin?
Absolutely. So, yeah, typically, I mean, folks reach out to us through our website, and maybe we can link that somewhere.
Yeah.
But generally, the process, as you experienced, Tony, is we'll talk about like content strategy for the newsletter, and then we really start to dive in that once we start working together, developing the content strategy. Thinking through what are those kinds of questions, the specific tactical questions that we can answer for our audience to build trust, to demonstrate expertise, kind of build this organic relationship over time, and also hopefully rank for SEO. Have something that you can chop up for organic social channels that you can use to grow that list further. That's one point that we didn't necessarily touch on too much, but um, the reason why I say it's the content flywheel is because while we're creating that newsletter content, uh, that goes directly to the email list, that same content is used for social channels, which then grows the email list. So it's kind of just the content itself acts as a growth engine. So develop the content strategy. We'll build out the entire newsletter in Beehive. That's kind of our platform of choice, but we'll basically do all the admin setup, make sure everything's good to go, get the emails in the platform. And then we launch. And then our team on a weekly basis is actually writing the newsletter, sending it on behalf of the partner. And then also monitor, advising around monetization and growth. So acting as a partner, not just in the implementation and the development of the content, but a lot of folks don't necessarily know where to start with the monetization. They don't know how to grow a newsletter, which makes sense because it's kind of a specific set of tactics that we use. Um, but we're also kind of your in-house newsletter team on the monetization and growth side as well. So high level, we try to make it as end-to-end managed as possible. And yeah, we've learned a lot, and it's an enjoyable process to work through as well.
Yeah, I think the two things in that, I shared a recent post, I think it was on LinkedIn, where I said, I'm 49 now. I don't know how young you are. You look a lot younger than me. I was like, back in the day, I did everything myself. I bootstrapped everything. I would paint every wall. I would fix every toilet. I did everything by myself because I always had more time than money. And now as I get older, I've got more money than time. And I'm like, you know what? For the first time in my life, I would rather just pay somebody who's had a seat at the table. Like, you've been at the top, you've been there, you've seen it, how it goes. You have experience that I'm never going to have. I'm never going to catch up to you and what you've seen and what you've done. So I'm like, it's better for me to just pay. And especially something like this that genuinely can be monetized very quickly and can start to return that capital on the investment that we're putting in. I just think, as much as I know therapists like to do it themselves and get their hands dirty, this is one of those things where I'd rather just outsource it. And if I have somebody that I can trust, that I can look to for advice, that I know has been there and has been successful and has a proven track record, that is the direction I want to go. And that's why I wanted to reach out to you initially. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show, so that we can kind of share this information. So let's kind of wrap it up here. I will get your contact information. This was live, so I didn't have it ahead of time, but I'll put it in the description below. What is the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah. So the best way to reach just us and the team at Tailwind is it's tailwindstudio.co.co. So that's our website. If you want, you can also just shoot me an email. It's ryan@tailwindstudio.co. And then I also, believe it or not, have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. We basically talk about more in depth, kind of the tactics on not just newsletters, but just developing content that converts and drives leads and sales and patience maybe. And so you can also subscribe to that, and that's at that's tailwind.beehive.com. So I'm sure we can include all these links somewhere,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's a few ways to reach me. And yeah, hope
You,
to meet some
Be-
interesting folks. Yeah,
before I let you go, let me ask you one more thing, because this is something that this will be the PS to this episode.
sure.
Um, I remember when I was building my YouTube channel, and then I was building my Facebook groups, and when I'm building these assets. So I'm a private practice owner. I have a physical therapy clinic, 2 clinic locations. And we were at 3 locations. We had sold one of the locations. And so I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, there's value in everything that we're building here. So even if my YouTube channel doesn't directly produce revenue, which it does, but even if it didn't, there's value in that. I have
Mhm.
sold YouTube channels independent of my business because somebody else can use the time and the resources that I put into building that channel. A newsletter, very similar. If I've got an email subscriber list, whether I sell it as a standalone asset, which we've seen happen, or I sell it as a value add to my business, somebody comes in to acquire Total Therapy Solutions, they also get the value of the newsletter. Or I sell my business and I just keep the newsletter, because now I've got a collection of individuals that I know have a specific need and would benefit from specific products or informational content. um, this is another one of those things where I think, on face value, the person watching this just thinks, oh, newsletter, just more spam. But it's really not. Like, this can be a full standalone business that has value in and of itself, that can be monetized in and of itself, and could either contribute that value to a full business acquisition, or it could be sold independently. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I mean, you nailed it, and I think you made this point earlier, and I maybe failed to develop on it a bit. But a newsletter is also an email list, and a newsletter as a medium for engaging that list is an owned audience. So
Yeah.
you think about platforms like Twitter, even like YouTube, as I'm sure you've seen, Tony. But like the algorithm, you don't have control of the algorithm, right? It can change on a whim, and it might limit your reach, it might limit your audience. If you have a list of emails, that's an owned audience that you can communicate with in really any format at any time that you want. And the reach can't be limited by some third party. So that's why a lot of folks have started investing in building an email list. I mean, if you look at a lot of big YouTube channels now, if you look at really anybody that has built a large audience on Twitter or on LinkedIn, you'll notice, if you start paying attention, a lot of them are linking to newsletters now, and a lot of them are linking to email lists. And it's because they've realized the value of that audience can be taken away pretty quickly unless they start translating that to an owned audience in the form of an email list. So yeah, to your point, it's really an asset that if you're able to build it over time, it's almost kind of a safer harbor for that audience than some other channels.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I'll get all the links and the connections in the description and the show notes. Don't get off the call, but I'm going to end the live stream. Just hang out a second.
Sounds good.